Welcome to the analysis of East African literature, and today we are going to dig deeper to Across the Bridge by Mwangi, Gicheru. Across the Bridge is a novel that narrates a story of a young man who never went to school and became a houseboy to civil servant, a rich man called Kahuthu. And in chapter 1 of the novel, we come across the narrator of the novel, who is Chuma. And the story opens when he is leaving the prison and narrates the scenes that he is going to face when he leaves the prison, and describes the situation outside as worse than prison. This is a few years after East Africa or Kenya got independent, and so he was disillusioned that when he gets out of prison, things are going to be worse. But at this point, he has not told us what has happened and why he was in prison. He describes the situation in the prison as a bit better, where he met all characters, characters from all over the place: doctors, lawyers, thieves, muggers, robbers, and even rapists. And in the prison, he described how he met one character by the name of Kizinga, and some other characters who were of concern to him when he gets outside. And so when he gets there, now he jumps back to the story to narrate what had actually happened that led to him to go to jail, and how he found himself in jail. He goes back to when he is a servant to a man called Kahuthu, who is his boss. And Kahuthu is a civil servant at the top cadre in case, and living in a very good environment, or living in a kind of Western lifestyle, as he describes. Kahuthu owns large estates, lives a Western lifestyle. Even when he describes how Kahuthu life is different from the natives, is that he loved and coughed Western and talked Western kind of language. He is alienated to himself, Kahuthu, and so he also mistreats Chuma, because Chuma narrates how Kahuthu always harasses him or looks at him with the kind of eye that says that he is nothing to him. Although Kahuthu is ignorant of the social problems that other natives in the country are facing, he continued to enjoy. And he has two children, one of them being a boy, and the other one is Caroline, or Carol, who the narrator says that the daughter seems lonely and alienated, because Kahuthu never wanted her daughter or his son Peter to interact with the common people outside his compound. And in that's when we meet the narrator saying that Kahuthu's son Peter could not tell difference between a goat and a dog. That is because Peter had always lived in the urban environment where he could not have seen goats. And the narrator now goes back to his village, where everybody in the village and people in the village shared their rooms or their bedrooms at night with goats. And that brings out the kind of lifestyle that Kahuthu lives with the family, and contrasts with the village where Chuma comes from. Then the story moves when Caroline, after staying, and she's now a teenage girl and in secondary school, and has been in that restriction from his father, sees Chuma as the only male character who she can interact with, and to kill her loneliness. And the girl one evening goes at wee hours of the night to Chuma's servant quarters house, knocks at the door, and Chuma is actually amused how somebody can be knocking a door at that time of the night in a secure place. First of all, he thought they were thieves. Then he remembers that the area is so secured with most presence of police patrolling the area, and there are always guards in the compound, so the place was secure. And when Chuma opens the door, he meets Caroline. And he says Caroline to have come to his small servant quarter house was something unimaginable. The reason why he says that is because Caroline is referred by the family as the part of the family, that they loved and cared for her. They didn't want her to engage or to get into trouble with anyone. And so Caroline was the part, and now she has presented herself to this character who is a servant, a houseboy. What does she want with the houseboy? And the character, the narrator in the story now, says that although Caroline was the part of the family, he was the biggest problem to Kahuthu. Why was she the biggest problem? Kahuthu feared that Caroline could associate herself with crooks of other teenagers around her environment, and could maybe in those interactions bring shame to the family. Because of these fears, Kahuthu strictly supervised Caroline and never allowed her to get outside her house. And when she's in the school, she's always monitored, and when she's leaving the house, she's also monitored. But Kahuthu never realized that Chuma, the only male in that compound, was another threat, because Caroline had seen this character, and now she had started to associate herself with, because that was the only person that she could reach without raising suspicion for his parents to notice. Chuma says that Caroline schooled in a cliquish day high school, and when she was not in school and in the compound, she was always monitored. Caroline developed kind of loneliness, and as a young adult and a very beautiful lady, was seeking the company of an opposite sex, the nature demites. And so this brought an opportunity for her to interact with Zuma. And because Zuma was the only character in that compound who she could relate to, she had now come to his house at late night time and knocked on his door. This kind of romance had motivated Caroline to come to Chuma house, and this is the opportunity that Chuma now says is going to make him move across the bridge of social life. And as we see in the novel, this is chapter 1 also, that not only Caroline was wrong, the house girls around the environment, around the area, were also environment. And so there was one girl from the neighboring house who had always tried to talk to Zuma, and she had invited, or this house girl, who is a neighbor, had tried many times to engage in relationship with Chuma. And Chuma was fearing if that girl moved to the compound of Kahuthu, maybe he would be sacked and he had nowhere to go, because his rural home, where he describes with a lot of poverty, and he has now developed liking of the cities. He didn't want to go back to that. So he was actually every time dismissing this girl. But one day, that girl was standing and calling for him, and so Chuma moved close to the girl, and Caroline was on the other side of the house, and saw him talking to that girl. After they had talked, Caroline approached Chuma and teased him, asking him why he was talking with the neighboring girl, whether she was his girl. And though he denied it, he thought that Caroline would go to his father and report him. And if Caroline could have reported Zuma to his father, he knew exactly that he could have been sacked, and that made him live in fear. Chuma described the beauty of this girl Caroline, because this girl Caroline in the novel becomes a pearl, and he says that she was slender and tall and beautiful with high quality, beautiful and built with high quality materials. So the imagination that comes to read a mind when you read this first chapter of this novel, Across the Bridge, is this brilliant girl, the beautiful girl Carol, and how they were going to relate with Zuma. And whenever Caroline looked at Chuma always didn't imagine how he could have come into relationship with such beautiful girl. And that night, Caroline has knocked on his door and opened for him and entered to his house. And he says they did a lot that night. And he realized that and he says, I didn't pause to consider how much damage I was causing to myself. It wasn't until much later that I realized the major significance of that night. That night they did a lot, but after he paused and realized he has made a lot, And that had a major significance in his life because it has made him cross a social bridge far away from where he belonged. And it was too late for him to come back. He had to find a way. And this is achieved when we start to realize that Caroline spends every night at Zuma's house. And this chapter 1 ends when Caroline still goes there, and a little trouble is coming because Zuma is going to make Caroline pregnant, and if Caroline becomes pregnant, he knew Kahuthu will actually take him to jail or he will be dead. And though he loved Caroline, this is not the kind of common love. It was an opportunistic, rough triangle between him and Caroline. And where he came from, the poverty, the social life, he could not have gotten to interact with Caroline. And this was a very big trouble for Chuma. And as he worked in the compound, Caroline would come and they would engage in those teenage sex unprotected. And one evening, when Zuma was still in his house and Caroline came from school, came to his servant quarter at night and told Zuma she was 3 months pregnant. Zuma felt a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, and he knew the time for his destruction had actually come. And he had only 2 options: either to encourage Caroline to have an abortion, or for him to run away from Kahuthu if Caroline didn't accept that idea of abortion. And as they were sitting there and negotiating, he thought it was not prudent for him to tell Caroline to have an abortion, though he says he knew abortion is a very dangerous thing, and if Caroline had to have that abortion, it could have led to other issues. So he didn't want to mention to Caroline to have an abortion, but he himself wanted Caroline to come with that idea of abortion so that he can research and maybe help her have a safe abortion. But Caroline never gave that idea and told him before everyone knew she was pregnant, they could be having a good time together. But that night, Chuma never ever slept. And he planned, without telling Caroline, he was going to resign and leave back to his village where Caroline could not find him. So the next morning, he found Kahuthu taking tea, and while he was still there, he approached him and told him he wanted to resign. That Kahuthu looked at him and wondered, why on earth would a poor guy want to resign and to live a better life than he lived there at his home? And Chuma tells Kahuthu that the reason why he wants to resign is because you want to go farming. And it was weak, but Kahuthu dismissed him and told him, okay, just go and you know who to address if you want to resign. Actually, the wife of Kahuthu. And Chuma was amused. He was not amused, he was actually haggard. He thought Kahuthu could have pampered him and telling him, oh, stay, you have been working here for 6 years, you can stay. But that did not happen. And so the poor Chuma had to resign and go back to his village. We will continue with analysis of chapter 2, because that's where now things starts to build up, and the problem that Chuma is going to face for impregnating Caroline and running away to his village, where Caroline also follows. For this and more, please stay tuned. We are going to have much more analysis of this novel and other novels in this channel. Click that subscribe button and fall back to us. Thank you.